Welcome back to Diamonds 2020, everyone. Diamonds 2020 is a free online conference for chronically ill Christians, and this year the theme is Fighting Together. So the next session is taught by Hailey Rose, who is an author and a blogger and who suffers from various illnesses. So she's going to be talking about chronic illness in the workplace, which is, I think, a great topic because a lot of us, it's just difficult, but navigating those relationships and how to do that is, I think, going to be very helpful for us. So, as a reminder, if you haven't yet gotten the study guide, you can do that at the link in the description of this video. There's both an ebook version and a paperback version. But I will, without further ado, pass it over to Hailey. Welcome, Hailey.
Hello everyone, I am Hailey Rose and I am so excited to be talking to you guys today about how to have a job or be in the workplace when you have a chronic illness. So before we get into that, I'd like to open us with a word of prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for this amazing conference and the people that get to connect through it. And I just pray that all of our hearts be open to the things being taught and that all of the speakers have peace and are able to speak clearly and not get their words jumbled and not have brain fog. That's what I'm most worried about. In your name, amen. All right, so I will let you know. I have the ring light here in front of me, which is awesome, but I normally wear glasses and I had to take them off because you cannot see my face or my eyes with the glasses on. So everything's very fuzzy right now. I have my computer in front of me here with my notes on it, but I might be like diving in to see it. So also, welcome to my room. This is my room. I have purple walls. Yes, I know they're cool. It's my very old recliner that I have spent many years in, recovering from surgeries and doing school. It's very broken down, which is why I have this lovely shiny pillow. So there you have it. All right, let's get into it now. So as I said, my name is Hailey. I am the oldest of 7 children, and yes, 7. 5 of them are boys. So lots of fun. To give some background on me, I have a genetic connective tissue disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and that kind of creates a snowball effect for other health conditions. So the only unrelated health condition that I have is a very rare form of hemophilia. So my blood does not clot like it is supposed to, which does not cause many issues day to day, but when there's an injury or any minor trauma, it can turn into a big deal. So I don't know how I got so lucky to have a like never before heard of bleeding disorder and this genetic connective tissue disease. So anyway, I have EDS, asthma, POTS, PCOS, chronic migraines, alopecia areata, and some bizarre gastro stuff that no one has figured out yet. So that's where I'm coming from with all of this. I was diagnosed with EDS when I was 17, but we suspected it from when I was 15. So I've had a couple of years to adjust to life with a chronic illness. And not that that makes me a professional, but I have learned some lessons that I would love to teach to all of you, especially those of you who are getting into maybe getting a job, going to school, that type of thing. Chronic illness, as you all know, adds another layer to that. And I want you to not have to learn some of these things the hard way. So before I get into the practical tips about getting a job with a chronic illness, I do want to give a little bit of background on my history with getting a job, going to school, and how God has changed those plans over the years and how I've learned to be okay with that. I know this isn't like directly related, but I feel like this is something that people with chronic illness struggle with a lot because I know I did, and there wasn't there was not many resources or anything that I could find to help me get through that several really rough patches. So I do want to get into that a little bit, I'm going to make sure that the camera is still recording because that would just not be cool. Okay, we are recording. Everything's good. So, I can't see my notes. Okay. So as I said, I first got diagnosed around 14, 15 with some of these weird things. And at that point, I was not super symptomatic. Symptomatic enough to get a diagnosis, but I didn't have nothing gravely affected everyday life. By the time I had graduated high school, it was a different story. So from the time I was really, really little, I wanted to be a midwife and I wanted to deliver babies and or if not, then at least work with mothers and babies until I learned the hours that midwives have. And then I did not think that would be as fun as I had imagined. So I did want to be a midwife from the time I was very little. As I got older, I was thinking maybe being a nurse would be better because then I would have shift work and I could work in the hospital and the NICU with tiny little babies. And that was my dream, and that was where I was headed after high school. So I graduated just a couple weeks before my 18th birthday, and at that time, my parents were not comfortable with me going away to a school to go to nursing school. So we decided together that it would be a good idea for me to do my first couple of years of school at home. So usually the first year and a half, 2 years of college, as most of you know, is stupid gen ed classes that everyone has to take. Nothing related to the major you're actually in. So we had decided that that was going to work best for me. I start school at Liberty University online academy, which is awesome, by the way. And I did that for a good, I guess, so that would have been, sorry, brain fog, I got lost. The May, I started summer term of 20 something. When did I graduate? Anyway, I was 17 and I started my first year of college. Must have been 2015. And no, 2016. 2016. Good gracious, that took long enough. Okay. 2016. I started my first semester of college and I just did, the silly little classes. And I did pretty well for that first semester. Second semester, everything was good. Toward the end of that second semester, I had an injury that ended up causing a snowball effect in my lower limbs. I had a knee injury that turned out was not the actual problem, but it participated in the issue. So once I started that next following January, I went to Shriners Hospital because I was having extreme excruciating joint pain and I was unable to get down the stairs, get up the stairs without excruciating pain. Couldn't sleep, and it was kind of on the inside of my knee joint. It felt like someone was stabbing me with a dagger every time I walked, moved, anything. So we didn't know about EDS at this point. That was actually, oh my goodness, my timeline's getting all messed up. That was actually the previous January before I started college. So I'm going into college with knowing something isn't right with my body, not knowing what. I was wearing 2 extremely bulky knee braces to support my knees because they were really wobbly and floppy and not very tight. The joints were not very tight. So that following January, I'd been in that brace for a year, and now I had another one on my other leg. So I was walking out these 2 enormous knee braces on, and oh my, those things are awful. I hope no one has to go through that. So that following January, we saw somewhere in there we saw a geneticist, and he's the one who diagnosed me with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Don't remember when that was. Anyway, we saw then an orthopedic surgeon, a couple of them, to figure out what in the world was going on because a 17, 18-year-old should not have knee pain this severe. We ended up with a very, very specialized orthopedic surgeon who specifically worked with younger people with sports injuries. Mine wasn't a sports injury, but similar to it. And the idea that was not the idea, what we found is through my x-rays, my legs had become bowed. Kind of think of like kids in Africa with rickets, that idea, but not quite as severe. Nowhere close to as severe. Definitely bowed though. You could see it on the x-ray. And so what we discovered is with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, when you don't have collagen in your body, or the collagen is defective, like it is in Ehlers-Danlos, there is nothing for the minerals to deposit on in your bones. Therefore, you have very soft, brittle bones. Think of silly putty. Stretches when you pull it, and it snaps when you twist it really hard or yank on it. Same thing happened with my bones. So my legs were not able to support my body weight, and all the pressure was riding on the inside of my knee joints on both sides. So there was bone on bone. There was hardly any cartilage left. It was like nothing he'd ever seen before in someone my age. So the surgery that had to be done to repair that is pretty intense, and we ended up doctor hopping, trying to figure out the best way to do this. We ended up with, again, this specialized doctor who did it specifically for people with bad bones. So that worked out very well. I'm so grateful. But those two surgeries had to take place within the same year. I had to have them on one on each leg, and they would not do them at the same time, which was a really good thing. It turns out I wanted to get it over with. So knowing these surgeries are coming up and knowing what the recovery period looks like, my parents strongly advised me to stop school, not get a job, not do anything for that time period that I was going to be recovering. So 9 months after I had started college, I stopped. And let me tell you, that was so hurtful to my pride. And I'm embarrassed to say that, but I was so mad that I could not keep up with my peers and that I couldn't continue working on getting to be a nurse. And now I'm starting to worry, am I even going to be able to stand up or walk enough to be able to be a nurse? Because they do a lot of that. So we have the first surgery in May of 2017, and it was awful. It was horrible. I couldn't bear weight on it for about 2 months, which is not a bad thing in most people, but with EDS, all of my joints are prone to dislocations and subluxation. So I can't use crutches for very long because my shoulders and hands and arms and wrists and elbows will dislocate. And same thing, I couldn't even hold my own leg up because my hip would dislocate. So we ended up getting a wheelchair, which was really, really smart idea. And I'm so grateful I had that thing. And I got really good at it too. And I only flipped over backwards doing a wheelie a couple times. So we're good. Anyway, that first year, out of school now, first surgery, 2-month basic recovery till I can maybe start walking. And it was another 4 months until they would do the other surgery. So 6 months between both surgeries, and then we did the whole process over again. Thank the Lord, the second surgery went a lot better, and I was back on my feet a lot faster. However, when you have surgeries on your knees like that, it is amazing how long recovery takes. And I didn't factor in either having a chronic illness and a body that doesn't heal quickly takes even longer. So now we are December. No, let's actually go to March. So we're in March of 2018. It has been a year since I stopped college. During that time, I started working for my dad in his practice because he did all the driving. It was only a couple days a week. I literally just went and sat in a chair and then came home and sat in this recliner. So that worked well, very part-time job, and it helped me to learn a skill. I learned to be a receptionist in his office while being able to protect my body and not overwork it. So that was amazing. I'm so grateful for that opportunity. A year later, it's March again, and I know that I am not ready to start school. And I want to go back like mentally and figure out what exactly it was that made me realize that. But I just knew that if I started, I was going to not do as well as I wanted to. So we waited and waited and waited. And all of this time, I'm still trying to learn how to walk again. I'm still trying to learn how to go upstairs without falling, there were so many complications after this surgery. And it wasn't the surgery itself, it was EDS. And by the time October rolls around, I'm finally decided, okay, I'm going to go back to school. How am I going to do this? Because there is no way I'm ready for nursing school. I can't even stand up for more than 10 minutes. I can't walk more than to the mailbox and back without extreme pain. There is no way I can handle mentally or physically nursing school right now. So, aside from being extremely angry about that, and I'm ashamed to say that I was angry, I was so upset that my plans had to be changed because of my health. Because I like to think I'm indestructible, and I didn't want that to stop me. All the time, we're inundated with these stories of people who go through something traumatic or horrible or a really scary health thing, and they come through it and they're better for it. And oh, I'm so glad you didn't let that stop you, is what we hear. And I think on a subconscious level, we feel like we have to be that person. I'm here to tell you that you don't. There is no one putting that expectation on you but yourself. So, if God decides to change your plans like He did for me, you're probably still going to be mad about it, because I sure was for a long time. But I want to tell you on the other side of it that there always is a reason, and you already know that. I'm just going to give you a specific example of it. So October comes around 2018, and still working for my dad. I had started doing a couple things for my mom's business. Really grateful to have these built-in jobs ready for me, but I still wasn't going to school. So I decided that I did want to go back to school, even if it wasn't going to be nursing school. So together, my parents and I decided something else that I might be interested in that I could get a job in. And I thought, business. I love helping my parents run their businesses. I have a couple small businesses of my own that I have done, which includes bookish candles and um, books. And there's a couple things I did when I was a teenager. And I really enjoy the starting of a business and all of that goes into it. So I was like, business school, that'll be perfect. I can get a bachelor's degree in business administration. And then if I'm ready, at some point in the next 10 years, I can take that bachelor's degree, take it into a nursing program, and I probably would only have about 16 months of nursing specific classes to do, and then I'd have a bachelor's of nursing. I'm like, this sounds like a great plan. I think I can do this, because there's still the option of being able to do nursing school. It just doesn't have to be right now. So that's what I started with in 2018. I started nursing school. And after a year, no, not nursing school, after a year of business school, I was ready to stick my head in the sand and never come out. It was horrible. And it's not going to be that way for everybody. I don't do the details like accounting 1, 2, and 3. Business law, like, no, it just wasn't going to happen. So, again, talking to my parents, I'm like, I'm going to die if I keep doing this. This is horrible. I don't even want to do school. Should I just stop now? What do I do? So a lot of other health things were happening around that time. So we decided to just, first of all, cut down to part-time or stop altogether for a couple months. I decided to go down to part-time, which is only one class at a time, which I can handle. But we also decided that maybe I needed to look into something besides business school. So again, I go through this whole mental process of what else am I interested in? And I keep coming back to something in the medical field, and I hated myself for it. I was like, God, if this can't happen, then please take away the desire to do this, because I can't see any possible way this is ever going to happen at this rate. Because even this year was really, really tough physically. And I just couldn't see any way that it was going to happen. So there's this amazing degree called interdisciplinary studies. And basically, it allows you to get, at least at my school, to have 3 separate areas of study. So I already had enough classes in business to fulfill the business one. And then I decided on doing fine arts for graphic design classes, which I'm also interested in. And I had the option, there weren't many options, but I could do like nursing or not earth sciences, like biology, chemistry, all that fun stuff, or math. Certainly wasn't going to do math. So my mom was like, at this point, you just need to figure out how you're best going to be able to graduate without, driving yourself up the wall. So I decided to start the nursing classes. And I knew by looking at them that they weren't going to be superbly helpful to me in case I wanted to go into nursing eventually. But at least it's something that I'm interested in. And it's not like, it doesn't feel like, I'm going to just slowly wither away taking those classes because they're fun. Even if they're, easy, they're still something I enjoy. So I decided to do that. At the same time, my mom was talking about the possibility of me doing PA school. A lot of you seeing so many doctors, you already know that PAs, physicians assistants, are mid-level providers, higher than a nurse, lower than a doctor, right in between. Same thing as a nurse practitioner, which my dad is a nurse practitioner. So that's always been an option for me. And the funny thing is that if I was going to go to PA school after getting this bachelor's degree, it would be almost the same amount of time as it would be to get a nursing degree after having a bachelor's. So I don't even know. Mentally, I'm still having a hard time processing that this might be a possibility again. And I'm trying not to get my hopes up for it because as much as I want to do this so badly, something in the medical field, being a provider, I don't know if that's ever going to be feasible. So I'm trying to be optimistically hopeful at the same time, not getting my hopes up so high that I might just crumble in a ball if it doesn't end up happening. So that has been a rough couple of years, especially since my health has deteriorated since the surgeries. And I mean, I just use the surgeries as like what did they call it? Like a waypoint. It's not necessarily the surgeries that caused any of this. It's just that was a moment in time where I can measure things. So since then, I've had more issues with subluxations and dislocations, which is common as someone with EDS gets older. The joints just get more worn out and the ligaments don't hold as well. So there are still struggles, and I don't know if those struggles, especially in my state particularly, are going to keep me from becoming or going into the medical field at all. Because I know that there are requirements for nurses in my state, and same thing for PAs. So that is something that I'm having a difficult time researching because there's not a lot of information available about it. But it is something that's there, and it is a possibility for me again, which I'm so, so grateful for. I'm very much enjoying taking these nursing classes. At school now, even if I end up doing nothing with it, at least I'm going to graduate. So that's been good. So that is kind of my history with God rapidly changing my plans and me being very upset about it. Because just by the time I thought I had it all figured out, then God's like, actually, here you go. Which is not easy, but I always grow through that, and I end up being grateful for it, even if I'm not in the moment. All right, so now let's get into the practical tips about getting a job, keeping a job, having a job when you have chronic illness. So, as if it weren't already daunting enough to get a job as a young person, try throwing an unpredictable illness into the mix. Just makes things so much more exciting. So, I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to listen carefully. The biggest barrier to getting a job is in your own mind. I thought when I was ready to start looking for a job that everyone was going to be concerned, meaning employers, potential employers, are going to be worried about my illness, what that looks like, and how that affects me. I was worried that because of the issues with the joints, I sometimes can't sit for several hours. I can't stand for 20, more than 20 minutes. There's these restrictions that I have that I just know from going about daily life. And then there's also other things like the whole bathroom situation, if you know what I mean. That's something that is completely uncontrollable and scares me. So I wasn't sure how to talk to a potential employer about any of this, and I couldn't find any information online. The internet failed me. So I do want to let you know through talking to a couple different people who own businesses that I've talked to about this, they are less concerned about it than we are. We tend to underestimate our abilities because we do that as a coping mechanism. and I'm saying we and throwing everyone into the same basket. I know not everyone's the same, but just bear with me. We tend to do that as a collective whole because we're used to failing our own expectations for ourselves, if it makes any sense. So we assume that we are going to not meet an employer's expectation for us. That is not the case in most circumstances. I'm sure there are some terrible, nasty bosses out there in this world, but most people are very nice and kind and are very accommodating. So, especially in today's day and age, a lot of jobs utilize your brain more than your body. Unless you were in a field that's like a construction worker or a landscaper, even then you could probably have an office job. I mean, today's day and age is so technology based, it really is to our benefit that we have physical limitations because it opens up the opportunity for us to gain technical skills on computers and software that are transferable and probably aren't leaving anytime soon. The software and computer age is probably not going anywhere. So that is a consideration. So biggest barrier is inside of our own heads, and the employer's probably not going to care about your limitations as much as you do. Second, chronic illness and disability are two different things. You hear me? Chronic illness and disability are two different things. Do they coincide? Yes, sometimes, but they are separate. If you're like me, you don't want to consider yourself disabled. I don't know why I do that, but mostly I think it's more a mind game with myself. If I think of myself as being healthy, I don't tend to get so sad and depressed as easily. So, which is not honestly not that great a coping mechanism, but that's all I got for now. So, skipping over that. Yes, I don't like to consider myself disabled. I am not that different than a lot of other people my own age. I just do life a little bit differently. And I have a few more limitations. And I have to pay attention to what my body's telling me a lot more than the average 21-year-old girl does. So, I do want to let you know that most chronic illnesses fall under the jurisdiction of disability, which can be super, super helpful trying to get accommodations at a job, workplace, whatever. So, just because you aren't missing a limb, and you aren't missing a limb doesn't mean that you don't have a disability. And I'm putting that in air quotes, not to offend anyone, not to talk down about chronic illness. I can't think of the word. I'm just saying that personally, I don't like to consider myself disabled, and I don't ever refer to myself as that. That never really comes through my mind. I just don't do things like other people do most of the time. So, because we don't have something as drastic as the loss of a limb, it's pretty easy to think, at least for me, that I can keep up with my healthy peers, which I've learned is not true. What seems normal for me is not normal for them. I've just lived in this body long enough to know what my normal is, and instead of being upset about it, I am getting better at just rolling with it and being okay with it. But that still doesn't mean that I can keep up with my peers. And that's important to identify, because I think when you live in a body with chronic illness, you just get used to it. And as bad as that sounds, you learn what does and doesn't work for you. And so at least I don't tend to get as upset when I can't do something anymore, because I probably can do it. I might not be able to do it for as long or as hard as someone else can, but I can still do it. All right, so any job you're going to work for, where are we at for time? Any job you're going to work for is going to fall under the jurisdiction of the American Disability Association. Also the same for school. So keep that in mind if you are a college student or a high school student even. So the ADA is what lays out the rights for people with disabilities. And what they define as a disability, so I'm not talking about our minds, I'm talking about the ADA. They define it as a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. A person who has a history or record of such an impairment, or a person who is perceived by others as having such an impairment. That last one's weird. But going back to having a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits, that's the key word, one or more major life activities. So if you're like me, I was thinking major life activities. So like martial arts, snowboarding, running, exercise, like that's major life activities. That's what I'm thinking. No, turns out that's not what they're talking about. Turns out they're talking about things like showering, cooking, getting in and out of bed, doing laundry, making your bed, those types of things. Vacuuming. Vacuuming is so hard. Any other potsies feel like vacuuming is the worst. I said, oh, yeah. I haven't ever passed out vacuuming before, but it's going to happen one of these days. Anyway, so major life activities mean daily life activities. Doesn't mean something like huge or major, actually extreme. It doesn't mean extreme. That's what I'm trying to say. Extreme life activities. It's a daily life activities. So using myself as an example, I'm going to give you a couple of different, and words are not working for me tonight. I'm going to give you some examples of what that looks like. So for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, I look like a normal human most of the time. I don't have any outside physical things that the ordinary person can see that would tell them that I have a chronic illness slash disability. So, like I mentioned before, EDS causes my joints to sublux and dislocate at random. I don't know when it's going to happen. It literally happens anytime. I can wake up with my pelvis dislocated. I can wake up with a shoulder dislocated. Playing my violin one time, my shoulder dislocated. Like anything can cause a joint to dislocate. Sometimes just I've been standing there with like my little purse backpack on and my shoulder will dislocate. I'm like, oh my goodness, there's nothing I can do about this. So that is okay, let's go back to our chair. That is an impairment. A dislocated joint is an impairment. Is there any external way to see that? Not unless you know what you're looking for. But that's a major impairment. After a dislocation like that, it sometimes takes hours, days, weeks for that joint to recover. And there is only so much I can do to help it recover. With EDS, I can put almost all of my joints back into place by myself, which I didn't know was weird. And I'm so sorry to all the friends that I had freaked out by putting my shoulder back. I'm really sorry. I didn't know that was weird. Anyway, benefits to having a chronic illness from birth is you have no idea how weird the things you do on a normal basis are. So putting the joints back, it depends on how bad it is. Sometimes I have to take pain meds if it's really bad to be able to continue functioning. Sometimes I have to wear a brace. At music camp this summer, I dislocated playing my violin, dislocated my shoulder, and then I ended up having to wear a sling for a couple of days. So that is an example of a impairment of a major life activity. Think about even like dressing yourself. If your arm is in a sling, that is right. Sorry, it's really hard to get yourself dressed without pain. I didn't know that pain was considered one of these major impairments that they're talking about, but it is. So if you have chronic pain like I do, and I know a lot of chronic illness people have pain, that is considered a impairment of major life activity. So joint dislocations are an example of something that other people might not see, but that I know is a major life activity impairment. Impairment to a major life activity. Wow. Talk about words all over the place today. Okay, second example of this. again, something that is not visible. So using POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which means that my heart rate and blood pressure do not balance correctly, and my heart rate will often get very, very high and cause me to either almost pass out or pass out and leave me feeling very, very awful when that happens, which is, I don't pass out daily, but I get close to it pretty much on a daily basis. So if that happens at work, and again, I work for my dad, so I am so blessed that, he's lived with me for all of these years. He knows what the look on my face is when I'm not doing well. And he's like, lay down before you fall down. So I do appreciate that. And I know that it's a huge blessing that I get to work with my dad. But at work, especially, not being able to think clearly, which is something that happens a lot with POTS, is when you're not getting enough oxygen to where oxygen needs to be going, and your heart rate might be beating so fast you can't think about anything else, or you're trying not to pass out. Those definitely limit your thinking and can cause pretty severe brain fog. And because most employers aren't going to want you to be making decisions when you're in that state. So I know my dad doesn't. He has a dermatology office, and so I started out as a receptionist. I moved to being a medical assistant. I don't have any training. He just trained me for that. No certification. He trained me. Um, and now I do some office manager stuff as well. But if I'm talking to a patient, he's not going to want me to be telling them things if I'm not in a clear state of mind, if that makes any sense. Because even if I know what I'm saying, it might not come out like I need it or want it to, and end up confusing the patient rather than helping them. So that has been something that I have been able to talk to him about. And I know that healthcare specifically is kind of a unique field for that. Um, but if that happens, when that happens, I try to hand that type of thing off to him. And then I do something else that doesn't require as much decision making, thought forming, talking, and do something different. So, paperwork or whatever. But that is still an impairment of major life activities. I don't want to be driving when I'm in that state of mind where my mind is foggy. I'm having a hard time making decisions quickly. Everything seems like it's through a tunnel. Um, I shouldn't be driving when I'm like that. I shouldn't be operating an oven. Like, there's all of these things that are considered major life activities that I wouldn't consider major life activities, but that the ADA does, that qualify as a disability. So I'm telling you all of this because I know that myself and a couple other close friends that I have with chronic illness, we tend to shortchange ourselves when it comes to getting the help that we need from employers, family members, whatever it might be, coworkers even, um, because we don't want to think of ourselves as disabled, or we don't realize how differently we actually function from other people. Hope that makes sense. So, according to the ADA, your employer, um, school, whatever it might be, is required by law to make reasonable accommodations. That word scared me because I was trying to get some accommodations for my school, because some of the tests that they had me doing was like 40 questions in 20 minutes. And if I have a bathroom emergency in that time, there's no way that I'm going to get back to that test on time. So that was something that I was working with my school about, but I was worried about the reasonable accommodations. I didn't even know what to ask for. And this is something that I'm still working on, like gathering what is good to ask for, especially in school, when you need accommodations. But specifically for work, some examples that I have seen are when you are requesting disability accommodations from an employer, you can ask for reasonable changes. So let's use someone who's in a wheelchair, for an example. Someone's in a wheelchair isn't able to use their legs at all, or not able to use them to the point of functionality in an office. They're going to be using their wheelchair in the office. So if we're talking about a room full of cubicles and the door is narrow enough that it's difficult to get the wheelchair through without either causing damage to the chair or the cubicle door, and then once you get in the cubicle, you can barely get the chair turned around and into the desk, that would be something that would be very easy to ask as an accommodation. So, how I would phrase that, no, not how I would phrase that. What I would want to request is to either be moved to a different cubicle that had a larger door and a larger area to turn the chair around, or have that cubicle that I've been assigned be altered a little bit so that maybe get a smaller desk. Maybe there's a way that they can put a different slider in the door so that it would be easier for me to get my wheelchair in and out. Anything like that is considered a reasonable accommodation, because it's not going to cause your employer any problems to either move your cubicle or change it so it works for you. There's not going to be any issues with that. Shouldn't be. If there is, you might need to find a different job. So that's one example. Another example for people with either hearing loss or vision difficulties is to have software. So if it's a computer that you're working on, that computer should be equipped with software that makes it so you are able to do your job. So I am not particularly experienced in this, but from what I have learned and understand, I know that Apple products have a lot of disability accommodations that are very easy to use. And I have heard from people with either vision impairment or hearing impairment that sometimes a employer will purchase an Apple computer maybe for the employee that needs those accommodations. And that is something, again, they are either required by law to make this already in place programs work for you, or they have to change it so that you are able to work there. Because if they hired you, then they need to make it work. And if they're not going to, then that's a problem. And there's a whole legal thing that goes into this that I have not researched very well. And I do apologize about that. But for the most part, this world is full of mostly decent people. It should not be difficult to get accommodations at work when you need them. And I'm saying when you need them because you are going to need them. It might not be all the time, and it might only be for a short amount of time. For example, when I had my surgeries and I had this big old brace on my leg, locked in a straight position, there was no way I was going to sit under a desk because there was not enough room for my leg to be under the desk and not poke through the other side. But there's a wall there. So that was an example. Again, I work for my dad, so I know it's different, but it helped me figure out how to make it work that I could sit at the desk and have my leg propped up, but not, moving or poking through the bottom of a desk or something. So we made it work. I ended up having to sit at a different desk so that there was room for me to put my leg off to the side on a chair. We had to come up with a communication system between me and him, as he's in the back with patients and I'm up at the front talking to patients. That was all changes that we had to make for that period of time. And it might be that way for you if you're having a surgery or if you are having maybe a new symptom that you're not used to dealing with. Usually it is not difficult to apply. I don't know what the proper term is, but I think it's apply for disability accommodations. I know at my school when I did this, it wasn't hard. It was a little bit, kind of had to jump through some hoops, but I would have expected that. So definitely wasn't difficult. I did have to have a note from my doctor saying, yes, she does have these um, illnesses. This are the daily ramifications of those illnesses, and this is what she's requesting as an accommodation. So, for example, I was asking my school for sometimes to have a longer test time. I needed at least 40 minutes to answer 20 questions, which is pretty standard. Like, that's not abnormal. I don't know why that one particular class was so weird. But anyway, um, that was so I was asking for longer test times, occasional extensions on projects. So that would be something where I would email the professor and basically say, hey, I need an extension on this project. I don't even know how you do that based on my disability accommodation, something like that. Um, and if the school approves that, they are by law required to adhere to that. So, really, we're pretty well protected as long as we can get those accommodations in place, which I'm grateful for. So, for my school, I am still working on getting the accommodations in place. It's not the school's fault, it's my doctor. And he's a new doctor. I haven't seen him very often. And he gave me anyway, he gave me the wrong email address to send him my request letter to. So I just either he just forgot it and lost it, or hasn't, or gave me the wrong email address, because he's like, yeah, sure, I can give you anything you want. I just can't seem to get this letter to him. So something else for when you're requesting accommodations, whether this be at your work or school, there are a lot of drafted letters online that lay out what you need to say and usually how to say it. And I'm not saying that, copy and paste this, but take that and use the same terms and words that they do, because it's not going to be a medical professional who's reading your request for accommodations. So if you use technical terms like brain fog, that should be self-explanatory, one would think. Dislocations, subluxations, GI problems. Like, in the chronic illness community, we know what those words mean. And sometimes we speak in code because we don't necessarily want to talk about the ugliness of it all. Someone who's reading your request is not going to be able, they're not going to know. They're not going to know anything. And they're definitely not going to look it up because they just won't. So don't use technical terms if you can at all avoid it. Definitely use some, but use descriptors as well, because this is going to be a layman reading your request and deciding if they're going to grant it, which they almost always should if you're being reasonable. Now, if you're asking for a 7-course dinner to be delivered to your office at 12:37 because you can't get out to get your own lunch, and they might have an issue with that. But for the most part, reasonable accommodations should not be hard to get if you phrase your letter correctly. So don't use technical terms. Do give the name of your diagnosis and say, kind of, I don't want to say as ugly as possible, because I'm not saying that you need to you don't need to blow it up and say how bad it is to live with this illness or whatever it might be, but give them a good idea of what life looks like every day for you with the illness that you have. So tell them, in my case, I have a genetic disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome causes joints to sublux and dislocate at random. These dislocations are extremely painful and sometimes require surgery, bracing, and casting, or anything. Throw that all in there, because someone who has no idea about anything about medicine is the one who's going to be reading it. So if you say it in technical terms, they're going to be like, oh, dislocations. Oh, well, that must not be a too big a deal. Like, what's her problem? But if you lay it out and say, when there are dislocations, it's excruciatingly painful. Sometimes pain meds need to be taken. And if pain meds are taken, sometimes thinking isn't as clear, and like give those examples, because that's going to help them understand why it's imperative that you have this these accommodations. To review, having a job, getting a job, keeping a job with chronic illness, the biggest barrier is in our own minds. Very few people are going to care about what we say, do, how we act than we are. We tend to be far more concerned about how we come across to others, especially as ill people to healthy people, far more concerned than they are. So that's the first thing. Second thing is chronic illness and disability are separate things, but they overlap. And chronic illnesses, almost all of them that I have researched, are eligible for reasonable accommodations through the ADA. Your employer, school, whatever it might be, is required to grant you reasonable accommodations according to the American Disability Association. And if they don't do that, then there are legal actions that you can take. I have not researched that very carefully because it seems like a bit of a mess, but that is an option. Even if you do not have what you view as a severely affected illness, disability via your chronic illness, you likely still have, as the ADA requests or qualifies, a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. So don't shortchange yourself, and be open to the idea of getting disability accommodations if you need them, and ask for them if you need them. It's not going to hurt. The worst they can say is no. And for me, where I am right now, if I got a no, then it would be like, well, that really stinks, but all right, I guess we'll just do this the best we can. Because that's literally all you can do. You can't do more than the best that you can. So that's what I've got for you today. Again, my name is Hailey Rose. I am an author. I've written a couple fiction books. My author Instagram is author Hailey Rose. My chronic illness Instagram is Hailey_Fight for Joy. And my blog is lakesidepublications.com. If you have any questions or would like to talk about this subject more, I would love to do that. You can do that in the comments here, or you can hop over to one of my social media profiles and we can talk about it over there. I hope you guys all have an incredible rest of your day and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you so much, Hailey. That was an amazing session. I hope that it was helpful to all of you. And also, I just wanted to point out, if you're not in America, I'm sure that there are similar things in whatever country that you're watching from. So that's a great point. As Hailey mentioned, her website is Lakeside Publications. If you look down in the link in the description of this video, you will find a link that will take you to her website if you want to see her books or, whatever, connect with her more. You can definitely go ahead and do that. There is also, as we all know, there's a giveaway at the end of every single Diamonds 2020 session. And the giveaway for this session is one Vogue mask donated by Vogue Mask. So thank you to Vogue Mask for sponsoring the conference. I'm so excited to be able to give away these awesome masks to you all. And we have two prizes, actually. One person will be getting two prizes. So we have the Vogue mask and we have a set of pill cases, which is super helpful, especially going to work or whatever, you can have it. So, and also masks can be helpful when you have to be around people or that kind of stuff. So the winner of the Vogue mask and the pill cases were donated by Hailey Hudson, who's one of the conference speakers. So thank you, Hailey. The winner is Stacy Click. So congratulations, Stacy. We will be emailing you with more information about your giveaway prizes after the conference is over. speaking of the conference being over, it ends at the end of the day today, but we still have a lot of awesome sessions in between now and then with speakers like Johnny Erickson Tata and KJ Ramsey and Stephanie Kerr and Becca Doss is up next, and there's just so many awesome speakers in there. So I want to encourage you to invite people if you need graphics or something to share or something to put on your Instagram story, go ahead and message us on social media or in the community, and we're happy to send you that, because as Spoonies, we don't often get to, share or invite people places, but this is something that you can invite people to, and you don't have to cancel because it's online, so you can do it from your bed or your couch or wherever you happen to be, even if you're sitting in the waiting room at the hospital. So, I just wanna encourage you guys to invite people and share, the encouragement that we're sharing today so that more they can be encouraged as well. Even if they aren't chronically ill, we all when we go through hard things, and we all go through hard things, we all deal with a lot of the same emotions, so make sure to share. If you haven't entered the giveaway, you can do that. There's a link down in the description of this video to the conference website. That is where you will find the giveaway, and you will find freebies that you automatically win. You don't have to, like, get drawn out of the hat. And there's lots of stuff over there as well. There's a merch shop. If you haven't yet visited the merch shop, go look around and treat yourself to something tangible that you can hold and remember in the months to come once the conference is over and the weariness kicks in. Just there's a t-shirt or a coffee mug or a sticker or something, that's over there that can remind you that you're not alone and that you're worth fighting for and that you are loved. So go ahead and treat yourself to that. Anything. Yeah, Haley says the pill cases are super cute. So yeah, they are. I wish I had a picture to share. But yeah, so go ahead, go explore the merch shop. Anything that you buy, the donations, it will go to help fund the conference. Since we offer it for free because we don't want to burden you guys with anything else, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it is free for us to put on. And a lot of the expenses have come out of my own pocket, and there's all these donations. So if you want to go treat yourself, it's a win-win. And if yeah, merch isn't your thing, there's also the option to just donate directly to the conference on that website page down in the description of this video. So yes, and finally, last but not least, is the study guide that I mentioned at the beginning of this session. It will help you again to take these topics and to make them your own, and also to remember what was said. When the brain fog kicks in or when it's been a while, you can just look back through here, and it has a lot of the main points and the scriptures mentioned and the resources mentioned. So you will definitely want to go get your copy of the study guide. The ebook is free. There's a link down in the description of this video, or there's also a paperback version, which is pretty affordable, and besides a beautiful cover. So I may be biased, but yeah. So go ahead and check out all that at the links in the description of this video. The next session is going to be taught by Becca. Becca spoke yesterday about marriage and chronic illness, and I'm so excited to hear her session today. So I will see you over there. There's a link down in the description of this video to go to the next session. So see you over there in a minute.